Happy Halloween everyone, and welcome to Bendy and the Ink Machine, one of the most confusing trophy experiences I have ever had, and after today's video it will hopefully be my next platinum trophy. Now, Bendy and the Ink Machine is an extremely popular indie horror game that tells a very unique story spread across 5 chapters, and with a third installment into the Bendy story coming soon and only 26 trophies, a suggested 4 out of 10 difficulty and a recommended 20 hours, you would think that this would be a very easy platinum. However, this game has one of the worst trophy cleanup grinds I have ever put myself through. So many glitches and annoying moments that would put this video at the 1 hour mark if I listed them all. Will I be able to push myself through all this? Can I beat the game several times over and still have my sanity intact by the end? Or will I give up halfway through? To find out the answer, stick around to the end of the video, but for now, let's jump into my Bendy and the Ink Machine Platinum experience.
Alright, Joey. I'm here. Let's see if we can find what you wanted me to see.
The story starts off with Henry, our main character, receiving a letter from his good pal Joey and is asked to come visit the old workshop where the two used to make cartoons together. As we explore this workshop, I am immediately getting the same feeling I got from BioShock, and I mean that in the absolute best way possible. I loved that game. Link to the video in the description below. As we continue to walk around, we see these cardboard cutouts and pictures of this cartoon character all around the place. This character is Bendy the Dancing Devil, who in the cartoons is joined by Alice the Angel and Boris the Wolf. All three will become main characters soon enough. Henry eventually stumbles across the ink machine, a machine that pumps out more ink than the company ever needed. Henry now has the goal of exploring the warehouse and hopefully activating said machine. As we go around, we find disturbing stuff, like this lifeless body of what seems to be Boris the Wolf with his ribcage sprung open. Moving on from that haunting sight, Henry comes across the ink machine power room, but we need to collect 6 personal and special items to activate each pedestal and grant the machine power. So that's exactly what we do. We walk not so aimlessly around the warehouse, exploring all the different nooks and crannies, and eventually we find all 6 needed pieces.
Okay, that's all of them.
And once we put them on the pedestal, we get our first trophy.
Now I just need to get the ink flowing somehow.
Henry then returns to the ink machine only to see it barred off and accompanied by some creature. Henry has to make a run for it, sprinting through the ink-filling halls, just beating the ink monster only to fall through the floor just before reaching the exit. That creature was Bendy, or whatever is left of him. And for surviving our first encounter, we got the Hello Bendy trophy. Henry now has to slowly make his way through the ink, draining it with each chance he gets. Eventually he stumbles across an axe and is able to clear his way, only to then stumble across what appears to be a summoning circle, and after being overcome with some visions and collapsing to the floor, chapter 1 ends. Henry wakes up and grabbing his axe continues onwards into the building, eventually stumbling into the building's music department, the place where all the songs for the cartoons were made. Henry first turns on the lights and begins exploring all the different rooms he can find. He eventually finds the switch needed to drain the ink that just so happens to be blocking the exit, but even more ink is blocking our path to the lever. After listening to some audio logs, we are given the goal of finding some keys. Now this is where the first bit of randomness comes into play. See, in Bendy and the Ink Machine, most of the puzzles are different each time you do them, so there will never be one correct guide for everyone, and that can be quite annoying when you get stuck. But Henry eventually gets the keys and unlocks a secret room, allowing him to get his next puzzle. In order to complete this puzzle, you must listen to the voice memo left by Sammy Lawrence and play the instruments he lists in the order they are listed. Again, this is random. However, you also have to make sure that the projector is playing whilst you play the instruments, otherwise it won't count. Now my puzzle was banjo, bass, violin, and then piano, and once I completed that puzzle, another door opened, and I got my 3rd trophy. Entering the newly unlocked room, we turned off the flow to one of the pipes. Henry then has to fight his way through some ink monsters and back towards the other flow control pipe. This pipe is down in the infantry, a previously locked away area. We come across this ink being that has a pretty cool hat, but also the valve we need to lower the ink flow. After a quick little puzzle, we manage to squish the ink thing and collect the valve. In doing that, we reach the main lever and shut down the ink flow, blocking the exit. So Henry makes a beeline for it, only to be caught and kidnapped by this creature, who just so happens to be the Sammy Lawrence, whose voice memos led us this far. Sammy leaves Henry here tied up in order to sacrifice us to the ink demon Bendy. However, Henry uses his main character energy and manages to escape his binds. Henry then ends up in an all-out chase away from Bendy again, granting us yet another trophy. However, Henry isn't alone in this newly found sanctuary, and here is where we meet a friendly face.
Hello? Someone there? I know you're in here. Come out and show yourself.
Henry awakes in a safe house with the friendly wolf Boris. However, Boris wants to be a bit cheeky and won't let us leave the safe house until we make him something to eat. So Henry searches around the area and eventually makes Boris his stew, and then we go on our way. Boris decides to join us, but the dynamic duo makes it to a dead end. But Boris, being the absolute goat that he is, climbs through the vents and unlocks the door from the other side for us. The pair eventually come across this toy room filled with little plushies of not only Bendy but also Alice and Boris. Eventually, Henry manages to power up the toy room conveyor belt and move the shelves out of the road to uncover a voice memo left by Jacksepticeye. Anyways, Henry continues on and reaches a room filled with only Alice the Angel stuff, but as he is taking a look around, the lights go out and the Angel herself shows up. Alice has clearly been corrupted by the ink and plays a similar role in the story to that of Sandra Cohen from BioShock. Eventually, Henry comes to a fork in the road. Either he takes the path of the demon or the path of the angel. Now, the path you choose does affect your trophies. Both choices will later give you their own trophy just for choosing them, but each path also affects other trophies, although you'll need to play a second playthrough anyway. However, in my playthrough, I went with the path of the demon and will later return to the angel's path. Henry eventually meets back up with Boris, who thankfully gives him a new weapon to protect himself. Eventually, the pair solve this door puzzle and activate the lift, allowing them to end up in a room filled with lifeless Boris corpses, with their ribcage ripped open just like the one in Chapter 1. Alice is narrating the entire situation and informs our protagonist that she does this in order to make herself perfect, and that she takes only the most perfect parts from the Boris to better her own life. After that disturbing scene, Henry makes it to a room where we witness Alice torturing one of the many ink creatures. It makes it very clear that she hates all other ink creatures, as none of them are as perfect as her, and that Henry will be her next victim, once he runs out of his uses, of course. Henry quickly retraces his steps and finds Boris already back on the elevator, where he will spend the rest of this chapter. Alice then grants Henry with his first task, to take this wrench and collect 3 special gears for her. Henry, with no real choice otherwise, follows through on her demands. Alice does thankfully warn Henry that Bendy roams these halls. If you make too much noise or create too much of a disturbance, the ink demon will come for you. So that's lovely. This is actually one of the only chapters where there is one scripted Bendy encounter, and then Bendy appears almost every 2 to 3 minutes. So the quicker you do this, the better. Henry makes his way traveling from floor to floor, completing all of Alice's demands and avoiding the ink demon as much as possible. After the special gears, Henry has to collect 3 extra thick ink blobs from fallen enemies, and after a few too many close calls with death, Henry completes that task. The next task is to take this plunger and collect 3 valve cores. Eventually we complete that, and then the next task is to take this strong axe and destroy all the Bendy cutouts on these floors. This task was most certainly the easiest of them all, but this is where the scripted ink demon encounter comes, as he's not too fond of people who go around and destroy his likeness. Now, whilst I'm hiding from the ink demon, I want to let you all know that I now have channel memberships. Becoming a member allows you to gain access to member-only discussions and polls on my channel. You also gain private access to any future member-only videos, and you will be granted your very own membership badge to show off to everyone else. Now, becoming a member is not needed at all, and your viewership is more than enough, but if for whatever reason you want to send some money my way, I would greatly appreciate it. Now, upon returning to Alice, Henry was given his next task, and that is to take down the Butcher Gang. These three ink fellas that show up a lot throughout this and the next chapter. Henry is then given his final task to venture down into the ink-filled depths and collect 5 mechanical hearts for Alice. Down here we are introduced to the projectionist, this ink man with a projector replacing its head. Now, I did struggle on this part when it came to collecting all 5 hearts, but eventually I did manage to do it, and Henry made his way back to Alice. She's finally letting us go home. Finally we can leave this horrible place and never return. Not only do we fail at escape, but Alice strips us of our best friend. Boris is taken from us, and that ends this chapter, and grants us the trophy for choosing the path of the demon. In this chapter, we begin to see more of the depravity that has been brought upon this cartoon factory through the evil ink. We see walls covered in chaotic writings, humanoid ink mannequins, and a secret door. Henry has to go around pushing specific books back into their place in order to unlock and pass through the door. Henry then has to fix this pulley system in order to pull himself across the gap, and once he makes it across, he begins his climb towards the top, all whilst being bullied by Alice over the intercom. We come across a room filled with more of these inky mannequins, but this time they're alive, seemingly acting out the memories of whoever they used to be. After a brief fright from Bendy, Henry makes it to Bendy World, an attempt at Bendy's very own Disney World, no doubt, filled with all the obvious carnival games. However, our main goal in here is to get the power fixed and make our way through the House of Horrors and hopefully to Boris's location. After Henry is done having some fun and participating in a little bit of target practice on the Bullseye Bonanza game, which we will have to return to later on, the first door opens up, allowing us to switch a power lever to open the next door. In that room, we have to make our way past these little guys again. Using these empty soup cans, we are able to distract them and slip past. In doing this, we manage to flip both the switches in the room and make our way back out to the middle. The third room has us in a boss fight against this possessed Bendy World attraction. Using an axe conveniently found in this room, we wait for the attraction to take a break in its attacks and use that time to attack its weak points and destroy its arms, eventually killing it. The fourth and final room is something very similar, a room filled with ink and the projectionist following us closely. Whilst trying to evade the projectionist attacks, we managed to take a photo in the photo cutout. And after activating the power switch in that room, the lights shut off, and as we are trying to escape, the projectionist tries to attack us. Thankfully, we managed to hide, and this is where Bendy shows up again. After that, we take the horror ride, and the ride takes Henry through this very unscary and cliche horror house before we find something truly horrifying.
Boris! Oh no, what has she done to you?
Henry is now in a boss fight against the newly named Brute Boris. The first of 3 stages has Boris ramming in Henry's direction, and upon every third time he will drop a bit of ink which Henry uses to create a weapon, allowing him to attack Boris when he is stunned. Now the second stage grants Boris the ability to leap at the player, causing AoE damage on impact. Same 3 times the charm rule applies here because after his third attack, Boris becomes weak and grants Henry with another attack window. On his final phase, Brute Boris now throws the little train track carriages at Henry, but after the third attack, Henry finally takes him down. Before we can mourn our best buddy, out jumps Alice flying towards Henry. But she is stopped last minute by Another Alice? And that ends the chapter. Henry awakes behind bars in this proto-prisoner cell, being held captive by the second Alice, whose name apparently is Ellison Pendle, the second lady to voice the Alice the Angel character. Now that is why there was a bad version, the first Alice we met, as she was the original voice actor for the cartoon character, but once she was replaced, she became spiteful and she carried that with her even when she became corrupted. Now, there is also another Boris who answers to the name of Tom. He has a mechanical arm and he seems to not like Henry very much as he's trying to protect his Alice.
Here, you must be hungry. Sorry, it's all we have.
Eventually, we manage to escape whilst the ink demon is approaching our prison cell, using this special magnifying glass given to us by Allison. And then we manage to make it into our own little paddle boat. Using this boat, we make our way through the inky water, but Henry isn't alone. There is this giant hand here, so Henry quickly escapes. However, during this segment, ink will periodically build up in the boat's blades, meaning Henry has to stop it and clean it out. Thankfully, after doing this a few times, we escape the hand and make it back on solid ground. Here, Henry comes face to face with Sammy again. However, this time he is in full attack mode. Now, after attacking with all our might, we manage to break his mask, and in this moment of weakness, Henry gets too close. After being saved by Alice and Tom, all three of us then end up in a fight against these ink monsters, and upon defeating them, I was granted 2 more trophies.
I think that's all of them.
As a team, we all make our way towards the film vault. However, this doesn't last very long, as soon enough Henry falls through the floor once again and ends up at the administration offices. Henry has to make his way through all these admin offices. After venturing back and forth through these offices at least 3 times, we manage to collect the ink and create the pipes needed to clear our way into the vault. And once the way is clear, we are given another trophy. Now, once Henry is inside the vault, Alice and her wolf finally rejoin us. We discover that what we want is not in this vault, and what we need is in the demon's lair. So after Tom clears our way, we come across the final version of the ink machine. This giant machine is the reason behind all of this. However, since our inky allies can't touch that much of the evil ink, Henry must venture across it into the ink demon's domain all alone. In here, Henry finds an audio log from the man behind the cartoons and the man that made Henry come here all along, who seemingly had a plan this whole time. He states that Henry is able to save everyone as there is only one thing Bendy has not seen yet.
You see, there's only one thing Bendy has never known. He was there for his beginning, but he's never seen the end.
The end.
The ink demon then finally shows himself in its final form. And now the demon is sprinting across the halls, crashing into anything and anyone in its path, especially Henry, as he makes a mad dash through the very same halls with the goal of flipping these switches and opening the doors to get out of here. Once doing so and finally passing through the doors, Henry comes into a room with nothing but 4 empty pipes. However, these pipes fill up soon enough and Henry's then trapped in this very small room with just himself and Bendy. During this segment, Henry must lead the demon into the pipes that are now flowing with ink, causing the demon to inevitably damage itself. Finally, Henry manages to escape the demon and make it back to its throne, and Henry finally plays the ending of Bendy the Dancing Demon. As the ink monster fades away, Henry is then sent to his closest friend's house, a world full of color, no ink, no monsters to be found, just an old man. This old man then gives Henry an instruction.
Come visit the old workshop. There's something I need to show you.
All right, Joey. I'm here. Let's see if we can find what you wanted me to see.
And it all starts again. And that is the end of the Bendy and the Ink Machine story. Okay, so after that amazing story and an amazing experience, it is now for the trophy cleanup. which is honestly the worst cleanup experience I have ever had in any game. But let's not sit around yapping and just jump into it. First trophy I went for was Valued Employee for replaying the administration officer's part of chapter 5 without being caught/dying. I then revisited chapter 2 and played the pipe organ 5 times, and then completed a less obvious puzzle for the Strike Up the Band trophy. For this I have to get all 9 Bendy cutouts onto the stage. You just do this by playing the wrong instrument, then running up to the projector, then running back to the instrument and over until all 9 appear, and once you beat the mission, you get the trophy. A little bit after that, I managed to get the Inner Child achievement for playing with 25 Bendy dolls. I then had to replay chapter 3 for the second time at this stage, but by the end of the video I would have played it a lot more. Anyways, whilst I was here, I found a secret pipe down in the depths and turned the valve so that I could go back up to one of the higher floors and find Henry's secret audio log.
Only 2 weeks into this company, and already it's gotten interesting.
I also chose the Path of the Angel whilst replaying the chapter, so at the end I got that trophy. I then replayed chapter 4, and the first thing I did was revisit the Bullseye Bonanza minigame. See, I told you we'd be back. But once I eventually managed to get a perfect score on it, I got myself the Bullseye trophy. And at the end of this chapter, in the Brute Boris boss fight, I managed to create a plunger and beat the boss with it for the Unlikely Victory achievement. I then replayed the entire game to try and get all bacon soup cans for the Master of Bacon, all audio logs for the Voice Collector, and all hidden radios for Gold Radio. Now, after playing through all 5 chapters, which took about another 3 to 5 hours, I only managed to get all hidden radios. We will return to the other trophies, but for now, I went for the Blazing Metal trophy, which is for unleashing the Tommy Gun in chapter 3. Yes, I did replay the chapter again. Now, this special weapon isn't a given and you have to work for it. At the start of the chapter in the toy room, you have to change this ink thing into the ink machine. Then when you come to the fork in the road, you have to take the way of Bendy. And then the worst part is you need to complete almost the entire chapter without dying. Complete it all the way up until just before the projectionist. This trophy ended up taking me a couple more attempts, meaning I was now playing this chapter for the 3rd and 4th time total. So after all that, and mind you, each attempt takes at least 30 to 40 minutes, I had this entire chapter memorized. Eventually, I did manage to do this and got myself the Blazing Metal trophy. I then visited the bonus area that you are able to visit after completing the story. This area shows off all the original looks of Bendy and other characters from way back, even in the beta version of this game. But out of all of these stands, there is an empty one, and after Henry steps on this, we are given the Standing Proud trophy for finding out where we belong. Now, there are just 2 trophies left. Now, I replayed this entire game for these trophies twice more, meaning I now have played each mission at least 4 times, and chapter 3 was now my worst enemy with me having played it a total of 6 times. Now, you may wonder why it took me so long, and honestly I wonder that too. I am sad to say that I never got these trophies, and sadly that means I never got the platinum. I followed multiple guides, I doubled, tripled, quadrupled, hexed, whatever it is, checked every can and audio log on all my attempts. I used chapter select, I did it all without dying, I started the game from the very beginning, I did it all in one sitting but nothing came of it. Neither of these trophies ever popped for me, and after all my struggling, I had over 12 hours on this game. Mind you, the story took me less than 4, meaning this failed cleanup took me more than double the amount of time that it took to beat the base game. And that doesn't even begin to include the amount of time spent researching and trying to understand the glitches outside of it. Now, I hate this more than anyone else. I hate more than anyone else that I wasn't able to get the platinum. And most importantly, I am sorry that this video doesn't have a platinum. Now, I do promise that this will never become a pattern in my videos and that I will do more research and have a better understanding of the games I pick before I pick them. But I did really enjoy this game's story and gameplay regardless, and that's why I wanted to make this video, despite the lack of a platinum. So yeah, that was my Bendy and the Ink Machine experience. Ultimately one that I enjoyed. The story is amazing, the gameplay is a lot like BioShock, and as I said, I loved that game. And I loved almost my entire time with this game and would still highly recommend it to anyone, trophy hunter or not, especially because at the moment of recording it is currently free on the Epic Games launcher. No, I'm not sponsored, I just thought I'd let you all know. Now, I have done my research into Bendy and the Dark Revival, the second entry into the series, and for what I can tell, it's a lot less glitchy and a whole lot more like Bioshock, so stay tuned for when I eventually do that video. Anyways, I appreciate you all sticking through this video and listening to me rant about my annoyances at the end there, but that's all I have for you today. Be sure to subscribe for more Platinum videos, leave a like if you want to see more Bendy content, and be sure to turn your post notifications on because next week my 500 subscriber special viewer Q&A will finally go live, so I'll see you all there.